welcome to the third grade curriculum preview for science. Today we're going to talk briefly about Unit 3, Earth and its resources for the third 6 weeks. As always, we start off with some key planning documents. We're going to be referring to the pacing guide, the unit overview, and looking at the vocabulary on the clarifiers. So one of the challenges with the third 6 weeks is trying to plan instruction around those two big breaks that we have for Thanksgiving and Christmas. So I'm going to take a minute to take a look at the calendar and talk about how that might impact our planning for instruction. The 6 week starts on November 14th, which is the same week also as the scheduled CBA. So just something to keep in mind. So basically we've got a 5-day chunk and then we have Thanksgiving break. Then we come back on November 28th and we have 13 full days of instruction, and then we have our Christmas break, and then we end up with 8 days when we come back from the break in January. So a 5, 13, and 8-day chunk, just to kind of keep in mind as we talk about how to pace our instruction. So let's take a look at the pacing guide that we have laid out for the 6 weeks. And as always, this is just a suggestion, and as a professional, you are welcome to change these around so that they fit the needs of your students and the schedule that you have. But again, these are just some suggestions about how many class periods each one of the standards or bundled standards together should take. So keeping in mind that bundling that we talked about on the last screen, the 5, 13, and 8, you can see that if we go in order here, that probably might be a tight squeeze, so we might want to move some things around. I do want to just point out, though, as we look at the constraints for time and the challenges of that 3.7b is a supporting standard, and so it has its own 10-day class time devoted to it. It's a very important standard that sets the stage for rapid changes and understanding the difference between those and slow changes in 4th and 5th grade as well. We've got two content standards bundled together here, 3.7c and 3.7a, and that's looking at how soils are formed and then landforms. This is probably going to be a standard that your students are very successful with not a whole lot of instruction time, but it partners well with this. This is a new concept for them, so you may want to keep that in mind. Then we have a 3.7d where we're looking at natural resources and what kinds of properties and characteristics make them useful in products. Because we have such a challenging 6 weeks to plan for, I also want to just remind you about another document that might be helpful for you. I know when I'm planning out a whole 6 weeks, sometimes it's helpful when I put pencil to paper for me to use this document, and it's one of the planning for learning protocols. It's for the unit. I've attached it in Canvas. You can find it if you go back into Canvas right underneath this video. It's also available on the district website, but I just wanted to remind you that was out there, and it's a great tool, I think, for planning. And you can actually use it, or you can just kind of see how it's laid out and kind of keep those things in mind. Okay, so let's take a look at what's new to your 3rd graders this coming 6 weeks. Over on the right-hand side are the kind of overarching themes and the process skills that I'd like for you to kind of keep in mind no matter what content or process skills we're looking at. You're going to be talking to your students about how things change over time. And things can change over time when we're talking about Earth cycles and systems in one of two ways. It can be rapid, which would be minutes or days, versus slow, which would be thousands to millions of years. And some of the things that they're going to be looking at happen rapidly, like earthquakes, volcanoes, landslides, and some of those things that they're going to be looking at and exploring are very slow processes, like the formation of soil. So just maybe even having this posted up in your room, or just change over time, and then just touching back and talking about that will really help your kids frame that. Also, your students, a very important process skill is they're going to start looking and using models and talking about the limitations of the models, why we use models, and how they are like and how they are unlike the real thing. And then that's just a perfect segue in for inferencing, which is that higher level skill. So let's take a look at what's in the content that's new. So I mentioned the change over time. That really comes into play when we talk about weathering and decomposition to make soil. And I've got those two terms defined. These are brand new terms for your students. And of course, when you say weathering, they're going to be thinking of the weather. So we're going to have to give them lots of hands-on opportunities to understand kinesthetically what weathering is, and that's the breaking down of rock. And then decomposition, which will be another new term for them, and that is the breaking down of plant and animal material. And we've got great resources in STEM Scopes and AIMS to help the students explore that concretely, and we'll explore those in just a second in the unit overview. When soil is made, that's a slow change, so that's going to take thousands to millions of years to happen. By contrast, a rapid change that the students are going to explore are going to be 3 examples of rapid changes to the Earth's surface, and that's going to be volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and landslides. Please note that the standard for this is to investigate rapid changes. It's not necessarily to learn everything about volcanoes and everything about earthquakes and landslides. They're supposed to be using models to investigate those different changes to the Earth's surface. But the big idea here is that some changes are slow and some are rapid, and here's some rapid ones. Alternatively, or in addition to this, we use models because we can't be there for an actual volcanic eruption, earthquake, or landslide. So we're going to use models. Remember, we've got that right over here to help them learn about that. They're also going to be identifying and comparing landforms. Those landforms were created, and that's an example of a slow change. And then finally, they're going to be looking at some of the characteristics that make natural resources useful in products. This is the basic standard and the baseline for renewable and non-renewable resources, which is a big standard for 4th grade. Okay, so I want to go ahead and appreciate the feedback some teachers gave me from the last curriculum preview. They said they really liked me kind of walking through how you might scaffold a particular standard. So I thought I would go ahead and do that again for this unit. And I want to go ahead and take that supporting standard of 3.7b. So if you look at on the pacing guide, we've got 10 class periods that are devoted to 3.7b. Keeping note, we've got 1 content standard, and then we're partnering with 2 process skills, and that's using models and identifying their limitations, and then collecting, recording, and analyzing information. Okay, so let's see what that might look like if we were to plan it out. So here's the first part of that particular standard. We're going to always start with the verb, and we're going to talk to our students about what investigate means. But the big idea here is the rapid change. So talking about using some engage activities either from STEM Scopes or maybe a book or maybe a piece from EduSmart, talking about what does rapid mean and what would be a rapid change that would be made to the Earth's surface. And they probably will start to think about and start brainstorming some of the things that we're going to be focusing on. So after we talk with children about how we investigate these rapid changes, it's going to become apparent that we can't go to the real thing. We can't go to a volcano. We can't go to a landslide or an earthquake. So we're going to be now talking about a tool that scientists use, and that's using models. So when we can't go to the real thing, we use a model. Now, models are great because they help us understand things that we can't see firsthand, but they also have some limitations, including size and the properties of it and materials. So taking time at the beginning of your 5E cycle to also introduce what a model is. And remember, there's a standalone lesson in the teacher toolbox in STEM Scopes to teach you specifically how to do this. So now that we understand that we're going to investigate rapid changes and use models to do that, then we're ready to break it down, and we're going to use a model to investigate volcanic eruptions. So that's probably going to take at least 2 days. Then we're going to use a model to investigate a rapid change of earthquakes, and that's probably going to take 2 days at least. Then we're going to use a model to investigate the rapid change of a landslide. So you can see how the scaffolding of this can easily lead up to 10 days if we thoroughly address the standard with that process skill. Now, after students have used these models, or while they're using these models, it's going to be important for us to bring that last piece of the process skill around. How are we going to collect, record, and analyze the information that those models gave us? We had some really cool investigations with the volcanoes and the earthquakes and landslides. how can we use our notebook and maybe even some cameras to collect and analyze that information so that we can support that we understand volcanoes, earthquakes, and landslides are rapid changes. So I hope that that kind of gives you an overall scaffold of how that might work for this very important standard. Okay, so we looked at how we might scaffold out that one particular standard. I want to just remind you that the unit overview has really some design features in it that are made to save you some time. So using that standard that we just looked at, I want to go ahead and bring over the unit overview and just show you an example of some things I think will save you some time when you start to plan. So let me bring over the PDF version. This is the unit overview for Unit 3, and we've got those guiding questions here at the bottom of this first page. Here are just some kind of really good things to keep in mind, maybe questions that you have about how to frame rapid changes versus slow changes, or how to talk about decomposition and weathering with your students. Those kinds of things are addressed here. When you're ready to really plan out your particular plan for that unit, the resources I think will be very helpful for you. So you can see here for 3.7a, I've gone through the STEM scopes and I've actually given you some notes about some particularly strong connections I think that work for us for this particular standard. I've tried to include more visuals as well so you know where those things are and how they might be used for instruction. Let's move to 3.7b since we were just talking about that one. Here is the resources section for that. So you'll see STEM Scopes has lots of different really great connections there, and I have some notes there, but notice too down here with AIMS, remember we were going to use a model for volcanoes, earthquakes, and landslides, and AIMS actually has a lesson that uses a model for each one of those. So you can see what's in STEM Scopes, but you can also take a look and see that between the two we have really great resources that thoroughly address it. I also want to just point out that we have some Delta Science readers that are some nice fits, so I've included a visual for that. And then I found this really interesting resource. It's called the North Texas Earthquake Tracker. Some of your students may have heard that we have some really shallow but pretty frequent earthquakes here in the DFW area. Most notably, a couple of months ago, we had a really large earthquake in Oklahoma, and some of the students might have felt it down here. So this is a neat website that just has earthquakes that happen locally, but then you can also choose the global view, and you can see where some of the stronger earthquakes are happening in real time and then historically. So just if you haven't used the unit overview and looked at the notes piece of it, again, it's information for you when you need it, not meant to overwhelm you, but it's meant to save you some time. Okay, as we wrap up, I just want to remind you that the vocabulary for the particular standard, you'll find that on the clarifier, and it's going to be right here. And if you haven't tried an interactive wall, this might be a great time to start thinking about one. Maybe just try it with one of the standards and see how that goes. When you go back into Canvas, if you'll look to the right of this video, you'll see that there's a just-in-time 15-minute video that I've created that gives an overview of Dr. Julie Jackson's presentation and her resources for the interactive word walls. So if you were able to join us on October 11th with Dr. Jackson, you'll find that to be a nice review, and all the resources are right there. Alternatively, if you weren't able to join us, you'll find enough information there, and I've tried to frame it for someone as an introduction as well as give you those resources. So again, head back to Canvas and you'll find a 15-minute interactive word wall presentation there that's designed to help get you started. Just a quick note about assessments. STEM Scopes has an assessment bank. You'll find it right here on the main menu page with all released items. So for those supporting standards, you and your students can see what they will look like on STAR in 5th grade, and just a guideline for some of those summative assessments. So you have a lot of abstract concepts this 6 weeks, so I just want to kind of end up our time together just to remind you that the more ways students experience something, the more it will stick. And so if we're just reading about it, that's only going to get us about 10% of the way, or only reach about 10% of our kids. We really should have a scaffold that includes lots of discussion, practice doing, and then ultimately even teaching others. Okay, so wrapping up, I have just a couple of final thoughts. I just want a big thank you, shout out to all the teachers that have been participating in the discussion board, as well as the Padlet feedback that we had on the October 11th SOAR in Science. That's always available in Canvas. You want to go back and take a look and see what others are saying about some of their favorite parts that we looked at in the SOAR in Science. You might find something you didn't know. Also, I just want to remind you, and again, thank those of you that jumped right into the discussion boards. Every 6 weeks, we'll have our curriculum preview. This is a screenshot from the second 6 weeks. And there'll always be a place for a discussion or answer a question or ask me a question or ask others a question. And I think it's going to be a really great, strong feature of Canvas as we continue to move forward with this wonderful resource. And then just want to remind you that there's an opportunity for a face-to-face meeting if you need that, or you would like to meet with colleagues and get together and plan, or have a coordinator there, and that's called C3. Those are happening every 6 weeks as well. Just another option to support you, our wonderful teachers in instruction. And you can find those dates. They're going to be posted in workshop, as well as we'll send out an email blast for those. Thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your work, and please let me know how I can support your instruction. Have a great 6 weeks.